Are you ready to do a large format banner? We're going to do that right now. I'm on Vistaprint.com, which is a great large online printer that sells all sorts of signage and trade show displays. So I wanted to do this to get an idea for sizing because, as you can see, there's tons of different size banners that we can do. And what I really wanted to do is a large welcome banner that will be hanging from the ceiling at the conference. We're going to have several of them all in a row to welcome people to the conference. So I thought a 4x8 might fit really good. Just kind of compares it to the person so you can see how large it is. And I wanted to also show you what grommets are. So it's going to ask you if you want to add grommets. And grommets are these little holes where you can put a string on and you can hang it from the ceiling. You can see right here how it's hanging from the ceiling. So we're going to also have to create our design to make sure that nothing gets in the way of those grommets. And they're toward the end, so it shouldn't be a big deal. So let's do horizontal 4x8. We're going to want to have grommets. We want to have it be indoor. It's going to be inside a conference. Banner reinforcement, that never hurts. We're going to get several of these, but we're just going to get the template for right now. So it says product specs. So just clicked over to product specs over here and just trying to get an idea for sizes here. So we have the 4x8 indoor. So this is going to be the document trim size, and that's going to be the full bleed size. So they actually do this in centimeters instead of inches. So we just have to keep that in mind when we're working with this document. So 243 by 129. So we're want to do it in the trim size, and then we can add the bleed later. So let's go ahead and do the document trim size, 243.8. So this is kind of where it gets a little complicated. This is why it's an advanced class at this point. So we're going to open up a new document. I'm in Adobe Illustrator, and we are going to use centimeters. We're going to put that in for width, and then your second one is height. And we're going to do this in CMYK, and this is going to be the difference here. And oh, let's add in bleed. So let's see how much bleed there is. What's the difference between the trim and the bleed? It looks like, if I could just take a calculator here, and sometimes you got to do a little math when you're a graphic designer, but we have our little calculator here. Let's take our bleed size for width, which is 244.5, and let's subtract our trim size, 243.8. And we're going to have a 0.7 bleed on that one side. And let's just make sure it's the same. I think it's the same on the other one as well. So if there's a 0.7 bleed, 0.7 centimeter bleed, then it'll be easy to add. We're just going to do that all the way around. And it's better to have too much bleed than not enough. So we can always bring it down if we need to, but we have this as our trim size. So let's go ahead and create. So here's our bleed, and there's our trim size. You can see there's not a lot of bleed required, and that's okay. And we might have to do some numbers to subtract. I think there might be a little bit more of a difference here between those, but you just break out your calculator and find out what the difference between the bleed and the trim size to find how much bleed you need to add. Or you could just do it full bleed size and just make sure you add in an indication of where the bleed is. So you could do it either way you'd like if you don't feel like doing math. Okay, so what we need to do, which is going to be a little different than the regular stuff we've been doing 300 ppi, which is a nice print resolution. But with large banners, 300 ppi is really, really hard to work with because it's so high resolution. We're talking about a 4 foot by 8 foot banner. That's huge. And if we were to try to do 300 ppi, the file size would be gigabytes big if we tried to have everything at 300, and that's if photos even come at that resolution, which they would have to be 10,000 by 10,000 pixels. So a lot of times with high format anything that's going in past the 2 by 3 foot range, we did the poster, anything beyond that that's bigger than that, I usually like to do medium because it's going to bring the file size down, and it's overkill to do 300 at such a big size. So we're going to do 150, and that's going to really help us out a lot. So we're creating the document, and here it is. Here's our banner. So we want to do a welcome banner. I'm going to gather some photos. We already have a vertical presentation with our poster. So we already have some things done with our poster, and we have a horizontal with our postcard. So we have two different kind of methods or things we can use to make this welcome banner. So I'm going to start to take some of these elements from both of these to craft what I think would be a great welcome message. So I'm taking the postcard, and you're going to kind of see when I put it on here how big this is. So this is the postcard, right? See how big that is compared to this super large banner. So we have all sorts of drop shadows and raster effects that it might be good to go ahead and remove, because it really slows down your computer when you have these drop shadows, these feathers. All these things really slow down your computer when you scale this large. And this is the big thing about large format printing. You got to keep that in mind. So I'm just going to remove all these little drop shadows in our properties panel just to kind of simplify so everything's a nice solid shape or just a simple photo. I'm going to go ahead and do that, gather some more elements together, and I think we'll have what we need to put together a very quick welcome banner. So I removed all the drop shadows and effects from everything, so when I scale things up, it's not going to slow down my computer. Everything's very simple and flat. And with the welcome banner, we just need to say welcome. And I thought it would be neat to have the year in there, 2020. And since there's going to be multiple ones of these going across the hallway or the big main area, I thought it'd be neat to do a color-coded one similar to what we did with our lanyards. So kind of using our lanyards as our kind of our design guide to do these as well. So I thought it'd be neat to kind of do that vertical welcome that we did on the lanyards as well, so we can kind of have some consistency and have the 2020 somehow down here, and just bringing in all of our shapes. I thought, wouldn't it be neat to have this kind of overlapping in some way? Have our blue photo from the lanyard that we can use. So once you have a design system in place, it gets a lot easier. Each time you do something, you're like, I know exactly what I need to do. We've already done something very similar to that. We have these other photos we can use, and we can make it might be a little busy if we do that, because this is going to be seen from the ceiling. And you know how big conferences are, those big places where you could have 40-foot ceilings. So we really don't want to have anything too complicated. So we can save that for the next one. We really want the logo to be big, because this is the whole reason they're here, is for this conference. And we don't have to make that background orange. We can kind of keep it with the dark blue and do like a screen. Or we could do the orange, which kind of had a dynamic pop going on here. So we can really arrange this however we feel like would be. I might need to create outlines, because now we're getting so big that our type doesn't get bigger than 1200 font size. When I try to make it bigger, it literally snaps back. You notice that? So that's a unique quality in high format or big format printing, is now I need to create outlines to be able to make that bigger. So there's limitations in Adobe Illustrator when you get to certain sizes. And some people even reduce the canvas size by half when they end up having issues with the size. When you start to get 12 feet by 12 feet, you're going to actually create a 6-foot by 6-foot banner instead of 12 by 12, because Illustrator doesn't even create that big of a artboard. So sometimes you have to cut it in half and then do 300 DPI. So when you do a 12 by 12, it's 150 DPI. So there's a little bit of math involved with this. It could be a little complicated. So I thought it'd be neat to maybe rest this at the bottom. We can even make this a color. So now it's just a matter of playing around with the layout to see what we think would look the best. And now that we have very simple elements here. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes trying to find the right layout and colors. And once we get this done, we can do kind of some of the other colors. So we can have all three of our banners in different colors welcoming people.